With the welterweight championship not only being defended this past weekend at UFC 315, but changing hands from Belal Muhammad to Jack Della Maddalena, this upcoming weekend's UFC Vegas 106 main event just got a whole lot more important. We will see the number 8 ranked former welterweight title challenger Gilbert Burns look to hold his spot in the top 10 by taking on the undefeated rising phenom prospect that is 25-year-old Michael Morales. And we've seen fights like this happen time and time again in the UFC, where the aging veteran, in this case Gilbert Burns, 38 years old, who has seen it all, done it all, fought quite literally nothing but the best fighters in the world for nearly a decade now in the UFC, will be taking on the bright, shiny prospect that the UFC wants to put the rocket ship behind in Michael Morales for this weekend, who is 25 years young. 13 years younger than Gilbert Burns, who is 17-0, never tasted defeat, a Dana White Contender Series alum, carrying that show's momentum and hype on his back as well. There is a lot of stakes riding on this fight night main event, and as I said off the top, with the championship just changing hands, even more stakes have now been added, because one man looks to hold his spot amongst the best of the best and show that he still has what it takes to maybe get back to title contention, and the other wants to break into the top 10 for the first time and show everyone that he has arrived. Gilbert Burns made his UFC debut nearly 11 years ago in July of 2014, where we all know he started his UFC tenure in the lightweight division and would have a lot more success than failures. But in August of 2019, that is where Gilbert Burns took the momentum that he had built for himself at 155 and turned it up a notch by transitioning up a weight class to welterweight, and that is where he would rally off 4 consecutive wins that would launch him all the way up the ranks into a championship opportunity against Kamaru Usman in February of 2021, and that win streak included Tyron Woodley, the former champion, Damian Maia, the former title challenger, and Gunnar Nelson, one of the most lethal submission artists in the welterweight division's history. And while Gilbert would lose that championship fight to Kamaru Usman in 2021, it did not come easy for Usman, as he would nearly be put away by Gilbert Burns in the opening round of their fight. Gilbert Burns very nearly became the welterweight champion of the world, but Kamaru was able to weather the storm and end up getting the finish himself in the third round over Gilbert Burns via TKO, and that victory for Usman would allow him to carry on into what would become the second best championship reign in the 170-pound division's history. And even after having to go back to the drawing board after losing to Kamaru Usman in that championship fight, Gilbert Burns would continue quite a bit of momentum, as he would win 3 of his next 4 fights, with the only loss coming to the still undefeated Khamzat Chimaev in what was the best fight of 2022 that year. And the victories would be over former 2-time title challenger Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, over perennial top 15 welterweight Neil Magny, and over 2-time title challenger once more, this time Jorge Masvidal. But not since that night against Masvidal, April 8th of 2023, has Gilbert Burns tasted victory since, as he has fought 3 times and lost all 3 of them. Belal Muhammad, who would go on to become the champion, Jack Della Maddalena, who is now the champion, and Sean Brady, who may just be next in line to face the new champion, JDM. So yes, Gilbert Burns is 38 years old. Time is not on his side. Yes, he comes into this bout with little to no momentum, having lost 3 consecutive fights, but take it with a slight grain of salt, because look at the level of competition that Gilbert Burns has been facing since he's moved to 170 pounds. That is something that his opponent Michael Morales is not even close to. But what Gilbert Burns doesn't have, the youth, the momentum, the win streak, all of that is what Michael Morales carries with him heading into his first UFC main event in what will be his 6th UFC bout since entering from the Dana White Contender Series back in 2021. The 25-year-old out of Ecuador, Michael Morales, is 17-0, with 13 of those 17 coming by way of finish and 12 of the 13 by knockout. He is lethal, he is dangerous, he's long, he's rangy, and he is powerful. And to be quite frank, he has showed a vast weaponry when it comes to his mixed martial arts skill sets. He doesn't just win fights on the feet, he can get the job done with his grappling and TKO presence on the ground. Just ask Neil Magny, the perennial top 15 gatekeeper that we just talked about about fighting Gilbert Burns? Well, that was Michael Morales' last fight in August of last year, and he would do what not many people can do to Neil Magny, and not only finish him, but do it in the opening round, 4 minutes and 39 seconds in. And prior to that, we would see Morales defeat Jake Matthews, defeat Max Griffin, finish Adam Fugit and Trevin Giles. He's had a very solid strength of schedule since entering the UFC, don't get me wrong, but when you look at those 5 names compared to the resume that we just talked about for Gilbert Burns, it's not even close. But Morales is 25, 13 years younger, 6 foot tall, 2 inches taller, and 79-inch reach and 8-inch reach advantage. You pair what he can do with those long rangy arms with his already incredible 92% takedown defense. Everything that I feel Gilbert Burns has to do, close the distance and press Michael Morales up against the fence on his back foot and get him to the ground, is going to be very hard when you look at all those numbers crunched there. And even if Gilbert Burns can get that distance closed and get Michael Morales down to the ground, he has showed, as we just mentioned, offensively at least on the ground, that he is very dangerous and capable. Now defensively, that's another story, and maybe for me that's something that I would want to see him be tested with here. Can Michael Morales get back up? Can he be a threat from the bottom? Can he reverse position and get himself on top and put Gilbert on bottom? I think those are all questions that I would love to see answered here from Michael Morales. But again, I just don't know if Gilbert Burns will be able to get into that realm and have that success, because Michael Morales is that damn good with his vast arsenal of weapons in the striking. But luckily for Gilbert Burns, he is a relatively durable fighter, having only been finished 3 times out of his 8. However, all 3 of those finishes have been by way of KO TKO, and as we already said, 12 of the 13 finishes that Michael Morales has are by way of knockout. So for me, it comes down to, can Gilbert Burns close the distance and get Michael down? That's where all of the question marks will be for Michael and his skill set from a defensive standpoint. And for Gilbert, can he withstand the striking and power and accuracy of Michael Morales? And if he can stand tall and make this fight a war like he did against Khamzat Chimaev, will Michael Morales be able to survive there? Will he have what it takes to go to the deep waters with someone as battle-tested as Gilbert Burns? Those are the 2 opposite spectrums for me, and the storylines that I'm most interested from an X's and O's perspective to see be answered. And you pair those X's and O's with the state of the 170-pound welterweight division right now, and what a main event that this truly is. Number 8 versus number 12. The former title challenger versus the young up-and-coming prospect, with all of the movement happening, all of the activity happening in the 170-pound division. Within the past few weeks and moving into June, we will have seen Ian Machado Gary take down Carlos Prades on short notice. We will have seen Jack Della Maddalena dethrone Bilal Muhammad. We will see on June 14th, Joaquin Buckley look to improve his win streak by taking on the former champion Kamaru Usman. Not to mention, a prior month in March, we saw Sean Brady destroy the former champion Leon Edwards. 170 pounds, dare I say, has never been as on fire as it is right now in 2025. So can Gilbert Burns keep his name in the hat? Can Michael Morales enter the elite conversation? That is what is on the line in the main event of UFC Vegas 106. So be sure to let me know down in the comments below your thoughts and your predictions for this main event. Will the veteran in Gilbert Burns be able to stop the momentum of Michael Morales and hand him the first loss of his career, or will Michael prove that he is that legit, that he is that good, and take down the former title challenger to catapult himself into title contention in the 170-pound division? And now that we're done with the main event discussion, let's jump into the rest of the card. And while it isn't all that stacked, there are some pretty fun matchups that at least deserve a little bit of shine in today's preview. The co-main event will feature the Bear Jew Paul Craig looking to end his losing streak, but in order to do so, he will have to take on Rodolfo Bellato, who, yes, enters this fight coming off of a draw with Jimmy Crute at UFC 312, but outside of that, has not lost in a very long time. Paul Craig enters UFC Vegas 106 having lost 5 of his last 6 bouts, including his last 3 in a row, and during his middleweight experiment, he would go 1-3, and the victory came in his debut in the weight class where he would take on Andre Muniz, and after that, he would lose to Brendan Allen, he would lose to Caio Baralho, and he would lose to Bo Nickel. All great competition, but honestly, it just wasn't working out for him at 185. So now we see him back up at his home, where he was for a very, very long time, and in the rankings for a very, very long time, light heavyweight. And honestly, since he left the division in 2023, not that much has changed, so he can reinsert himself pretty quickly into the top 15 discussions if, and only if, he takes down Rodolfo Bellato. As I said, Bellato's coming into this fight after having a draw with Jimmy Crute back at UFC 312 in February, but prior to that had tallied off 4 wins in a row, including a victory on the Contender Series and a knockout in his UFC debut against Ihor Potieria, but that was in December of 2023, so we've only seen him one time since, and none of that was in 2024, but it's looking like he's trying to stay active in 2025, and can he get the biggest win of his career over someone like Paul Craig, who, yes, doesn't have a lot of momentum, but is always insanely dangerous, especially with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills, and Bellato is very dangerous in his own right, having finished 11 of his 12 wins overall. I would be absolutely shocked if this fight somehow goes the distance, because even in Bellato's losses, both of them that he has, he's been knocked out, and for Paul Craig, he's finished all 17 of his victories and been finished in 7 of his 9 losses. This fight will not last long, and it could be potentially very sloppy. Don't blink. Who knows what'll happen. Next up is a very fun fight in the not featherweight division, but lightweight division between Super Sadiq Youssef, the former top 15 featherweight ranked fighter, and Myron Santos, who is 2-0 in the UFC thus far. Sadiq needs a bounce-back win in a big way as he will enter UFC Vegas 106 having lost his last 2 fights to Diego Lopez and Edson Barboza, albeit, but still proving that he hasn't been able to get the job done in his biggest opportunities. And you pair that with, that was October of 2023 against Barboza, in April of 2024, not a lot of activity for Sadiq Youssef either, so he really needs a victory here to remain relevant in potentially the lightweight division, but definitely in the featherweight division. And Myron Santos is riding a high right now, made his debut last August where he would get a knockout in the second round against Con Ofley, and then followed that up with a victory at UFC 313 just a couple months ago in March where he would get a victory over Francis Marshall, albeit, dare I say, a robbery, but definitely controversial. But regardless, he's only 24 years old and already has a 15-1 record to his name and has finished 8 of those 15 by way of knockout. He is very precise, technical, and dangerous, but Sadiq Youssef has a lot more high-level experience. I look for that to pay dividends here for Sadiq, and honestly, finding himself at this point in his career where he is in a must-win situation, I want to see if Sadiq Youssef can turn the tide here in his career before it's too late. We've got Dustin Stoltzfus taking on Nursultan Ruziboev in a fight that more than likely won't see the judges' scorecards. Stoltzfus has won 2 of his last 3 fights, both of them by way of finish, including his win over Marc-Andre Barriol in November of last year where he knocked him out in the first round. And as a matter of fact, even with his losses included, hasn't been to the scorecards in nearly 3 years. And for Ruziboev, 3 of his 4 UFC fights have not gone to the judges' scorecards. As a matter of fact, none of the 3 have even gone to the 3rd round. He is a kill or be killed style of fighter, and 3-1 in those 4 fights thus far, and the only loss was to Joaquin Buckley in a fight that did see the scorecards. And outside of that loss to Buckley last May, he hasn't lost a fight since December of 2019, so he is on a tear right now and has looked very good in the UFC thus far. I look for him to probably get the victory here over the aging veteran that is Stoltzfus, but don't count out Dustin either, as he just showed against Marc-Andre a few months ago. And then we've got a very fun fight in the featherweight division between 2 guys that want to stay busy apparently in 2025, because we have Julian Juicy J. Erosa taking on Melquizel Costa. Julian just fought a little over a month ago by the time this fight happens at UFC 314, where he not only beat Darren Elkins, but he finished the veteran in the very first round, and as a matter of fact, enters this fight on a 3-fight first round finish win streak. The 2 other wins on the streak were against Christian Rodriguez and Ricardo Ramos, both of them by way of submission, and Julian Erosa has finished 26 of his 31 professional wins with 14 submissions and 12 knockouts. He's dangerous everywhere. And he's been knocked out in 7 of his 11 losses. This fight's going to be fun, isn't it? And for Melquizel Costa, this is going to be his 3rd fight of the year already, and it's just the middle of May. He's looking to challenge 2020 Kevin Holland this year if he gets another win against Julian Erosa this weekend. He's won 4 of his last 5 fights, including 3 in a row. Christian Rodriguez, March 29th most recently. Before that, he fought just a month prior against Andre Fili and submitted him in the first round, and before that, he got a victory in June of last year He's finished 15 of his 23 wins with 7 knockouts and 8 submissions, and been finished in 4 of his 7 losses. And honestly, the winner here not only continues their momentum in 2025, but probably it's a top 15 opponent next. And lastly, we actually have a top 15 strawweight bout taking place on this card, as we will see the number 13 ranked Tisha Pennington, longtime UFC veteran, against Luana Pinheiro, who currently sits at number 15 and is in desperate need of a victory. Tisha Pennington would go 1-1 in 2024 upon returning from having her baby with Raquel Pennington, and is coming off of a victory over former champion Carla Esparza that came at UFC 307 last October. So now she's having her first fight of 2025 and looking to stop the younger fighter here in Luana Pinheiro. Luana is a 2020 Dana White Contender Series alum who started her UFC career 3-0, but since then is on a very bad stretch, and should she lose here against Tisha Pennington, her job may just be on the line. She lost to Amanda Hebos, Angela Hill, and Jillian Roberson, with 2 of those 3 coming by way of stoppage in a dominant win from Roberson in November of last year, Luana's most recent fight. So at 32 years old, still in those prime years, she has to get a win here, and if she can get the job done, it would be arguably the biggest win of her career over someone as highly accredited as Tisha Pennington in terms of strength of schedule. The only other win for Luana that rivals it would be the win over Michelle Waterson-Gomez. So that is it for the UFC Vegas 106 breakdown. Please be sure to let me know down in the comments below not only your predictions for the main event, but your thoughts on the rest of the card as well. What spots are you looking for from a betting perspective and just from a prediction perspective as well? And are there any storylines and X's and O's that you think I should have touched on that I didn't? Let me know down below. If you enjoyed this preview, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every single week, I break down the biggest and best fights from a storyline and what is at stake perspective, and sprinkle in some X's and O's talk as well. And I recap all of the most meaningful results from each card every weekend as well as give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can also join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can like the Facebook page Verbal Sparring MMA. And last but not least, you can also follow along on your favorite podcast listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where episodes release there every Friday and Monday. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you all in the next video.